Okay, so good evening. What did you do? So we are before time. Did you see the question paper? नहीं देखा? देखा? क्या लगा? अभी आएगा ही नहीं? अभी कैसे आएगा? हाँ, इसी के लिए तो आ रहे हो समझने के लिए. Fine. So once you do it, you will understand. See exactly the way, whatever we have discussed, everything is there in the paper. That is what UPSC has evolved. We evolved it before UPSC. Right? See. So let's say now they have even reduced the difficulty level of the paper very much. Because it is not fact based. Right? It is concept based. So पूरा paper ही जो उन्होंने दिया है, both 1 and 2. Right? And first thing, like we always say, it is not limited to a particular topic. That is always they wanted to improve themselves that way. Fine, but they took a lot of time to do it. So paper 1, paper 2, lot of overlapping is visible in the question paper. Fine. So people say interlink. Interlink का मतलब ये नहीं होता scholar का name यहाँ. Interlink is the idea. So when you start with the understanding of public interest, the same idea is visible throughout paper 2 also. Right? So anywhere public administration is functioning, its primary purpose is interest, public interest. So see, every question in that paper reflects an idea. And ideas are only understood or generated by discussion, right? Not by linear transmission. Linear transmission is कि टीचर ने नोट्स बनाए हैं और वो खड़े होके लिखवा रहा है, लिखो 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 लिखो. Fine. Your understanding has not developed. Only your notebook has become thick, right? And your brain has become thicker. So that is why discussion very important. Analysis is very important, right? One topic has lot of dimensions. Very easily it can be fitted into another topic. So never look at the paper only topic wise. That is a wrong strategy. Right? So anybody who has understood conceptually all the students, they have done very well. Right? In fact, बहुत सारे topics हैं जो predictable हैं हमेशा. Only thing is that every time they ask new dimensions, new dimensions, new dimensions. ठीक है, इसलिए you don't have to worry. You read your notes only. Right? Everything will be in that first of all. Right? Secondly, obviously जो current चाहिए वो थोड़ा बहुत general studies से आएगा और थोड़ा बहुत आपके मैगजीन से आएगा. Fine? So एक महीने बाद सब समझ में आएगा. ठीक है, लेकिन पहले मुझे एश्योर करना पड़ेगा कि तुम्हें समझ में आ रहा है या नहीं आ रहा है. So what is public interest? Let's start with that. Today we'll talk about meaning and scope. Basically, अगर हम, if I want to classify it, so your unit 1. Did you read the breakup given to you? Honestly, tell me, did you read it? पढ़ा नहीं? किसी चीज में तो हाँ बोलोगे. अच्छा, अच्छे बच्चे हो? हाँ या ना? अच्छे बच्चे, अच्छे. खुद ही तारीफ करो अपनी. You are praising yourself, right? Okay. So public interest जो है क्या basis है, right? Obviously the study of pub-ad would only be logical, right? If we understand that what is the primary role of public administration in society. So can public interest be defined? First question. Oh, correct. But can it be defined? No, it may not be defined exactly, but can it be understood? Yes, through certain principles, right? All these principles are simultaneously needed to understand public interest. None of them can individually help us understand what is public interest. Okay. That automatically gives public interest a multi-dimensional perspective, multi-dimensional understanding. So for some, it is more qualitative. For some, it is quantitative, right? Countries like India or developing countries may have more quantitative criteria, whereas developed countries might have more qualitative criteria, though both are present in both the countries, right? It's not that only qualitative will require, right? Pakistan, for example, right? An anarchy of public interest. Okay, lack of any definition, neither lack of any clarity in terms of what is to be served. Why? Because political instability is very high. So do you understand? If we have greater political stability, if we have well-developed administrative system, right? Even serving public interest becomes easy. Defining public interest becomes easy. Our policies will reflect public interest, right? Even though it may have diverse aspects, right? So public interest is the defining feature, right? So now comes the next part. What is that? Understanding public administration, right? So what first thing comes to your mind when we say public administration? UPSC ka optional. Very logical. That is what should come to your mind, right? That it is an optional, right? Optional means what? A subject to be studied, right? So can I simplify and say the first thing that if I want to define or understand that what this term means to me, the first thing that it means to me simply is a subject. Right? What does it indicate? A subject, right? What is a subject? What is a subject? It may have so many things. But subject क्या है? Grammar में पढ़ा है subject और predicate. What is subject? Central, right? So, in simple sense, what is subject? Subject is it's an area of study, right? It is obviously some matter. What does matter mean here? Subject matter. There is some defined content to be studied. That is why we say one subject differs from another subject. Right? So something X as a subject and Y as a subject, they will both have different subject matter. That is content of study. So if I say that there is a defined area of study which I call public administration, it has a unique content to be studied. So can I say in very sophisticated terms that public administration, including all this, right, all this together, right, public administration is an academic discipline. Now I'm using a very sophisticated term for the same thing. It's an academic discipline. Why we are using the word academic? Because we are studying, we are not doing it. Right? Academic. Why discipline? What is the difference between discipline and subject? ये क्वेश्चन आता है एग्जाम में. Right? The public administration or study of PubAd is more of a subject than a discipline right now. Okay. Theoretical. Okay. But the theoretical thing that you will do, it will have some knowledge coming from subject. Norms will be more conventional. It will lack the scientific knowledge. See, every subject, when it is developed as an area of study, what is the purpose? That subject must have concrete knowledge, concrete content. It should be distinguished from the others. How this content will be developed? This content will be developed through scientific study. Anything that you want to develop, you don't want to develop it in an unscientific manner. Non-scientific means something which is not based on logic, something which is not rational. So anything that you want to develop as a defined area of study, you develop that content through scientific understanding. What is scientific understanding? For example, I say that public administration in developing countries is slow, corrupt, right? Does not work for the public interest. It is influenced by politics. It focuses only on politicization. This. Let's say I come with this content. How did I arrive at this content? Is it my own story or it is something based on some probable understanding? Understanding. I have tried to derive this knowledge somehow, right? By studying it, by collecting some data, right? By looking at some trend, some facts. See? So every subject or area of study, when it is developed, it should be based on some scientific knowledge. I'm not talking about physics or astrophysics, right? Or whatever, nuclear sciences. I'm simply saying any subject, whether it is humanities or physical sciences, it doesn't matter. So anything when it will be developed, compiled, right? So that it can be now studied as a text. It should give us some knowledge, right? It should give us some understanding of what we are studying. So anything which is happening practically, when it is converted into a knowledge, right? That knowledge must reflect scientific understanding. Scientific here does not mean science. Scientific here means which is logical, which is based on facts, which is based on some studies. It is not a story. It is not a hearsay. It is not a gossip. It is not a convention. You have just used it like this. So everything that we developed, when it is developed in terms of a scientific and empirical knowledge. So see, I have an area of study, that is the content, right? How have I developed this content? How did I study this particular area, right? What methods I use to derive this knowledge? Should this knowledge be considered to be acceptable or not? ये कैसे depend करता है? How scientific I am. So how logically I have developed this knowledge, that is very important aspect. To accept some knowledge as credible, right? This knowledge is acceptable. In fact, that itself is a question mark. That whatever are you saying, is it acceptable or not? So if it is a credible knowledge, if it is an acceptable knowledge, if it is a knowledge which gives us good insight into something, it helps us actually understand what is happening, then it is called a discipline. So discipline is a higher version of subject, right? Discipline is an evolved understanding of the content we are studying, and it makes it unique in comparison to others. Because this is a big debate, that is public administration a discipline or it is a subject. So anything when we start studying, it is a subject, because we are not specialized in that. We do not have unique knowledge. We might borrow so much of knowledge from different places. See? That is what you are doing right now. You are not an evolved aspirant, right? You are not even an aspirant right now. You are just an aspiring aspirant. You will be an aspirant once you realize, once you understand how deep you are in this process. किसका सुनना नहीं सुनना ये भी इंपॉर्टेंट है, क्या सुनना नहीं सुनना ये भी इंपॉर्टेंट है. Your brain, just like your gut, is not a dustbin, right? You cannot put anything that you want or anything that you feel comfortable with. मसालेदार खाना तो हमेशा अच्छा लगेगा, right? डाइजेशन में प्रॉब्लम होगी. सेम में मसालेदार कंटेंट भी बहुत अच्छा लगेगा, मजा आ रहा है, अच्छा, राइट? सो ऑलरेडी मैं कलेक्टर बन चुका हूं. So that is also important, what you are feeding your brain. So you understand this way, that something, when it is developed or understood or studied in a scientific manner, right, it is developed through studies conducted logically, data which is derived, facts which are used, something when it is proven, right, through understanding, analysis, verification, right? Then that is known as empirical knowledge. What is empirical? Something which is based on facts, right? Something which is based on experimentation. Right? Even something which can be based on observation. Because from observation also you derive lot of facts. So once you describe that a UPSC interview was like this, so I went inside, I saw 5 people sitting there, right? And there were people from different walks of life. There was one chairman, right? Mostly this UPSC interview is too or highly formal in nature. It generally lasts between 25 to 40 minutes. ये क्या है? ये facts हैं, but वो observation पे based हैं, right? या आपके खुद के experience पे based हैं. So there can be multiple sources, right, from which you can derive some facts or some knowledge, and then that you can convert into a किस चीज में convert करोगे उसको? Into a theory. So theory is what? A descriptive knowledge based on scientific understanding. That is a theory. So see, what is a subject? A subject is a focus of study. How subject becomes a discipline? When it is scientifically analyzed, when it is verified, when it is proven, right? When we derive it from certain experiments and then convert it into a descriptive knowledge which can be used by whom? By everyone who wants to study. So if this knowledge is universally used or somewhere universally applicable, universally does not mean, right, that the knowledge of fabric can be applied to the knowledge of kitchen. It does not mean that, right? So clothing is a separate segment. Let's say food is a separate segment. So knowledge regarding food, which is universal, can be applied anywhere, right? That is why there is segmentation of knowledge. Okay, that is specialization. So when you're developing a theory, you're developing knowledge regarding something. That knowledge can be universally applied on that something anywhere in this world. That is the idea. So discipline क्या है? बहुत simply, it is empirical knowledge, correct? An advanced understanding based on scientific knowledge or scientific study, which converts and a more or less a content which we are studying into a more sophisticated knowledge or a theory which can be universally applied.
An example of what a thing which is subject but not discipline.
You see, when you start off with, let's say, you start with something hypothesis, for example. Okay, let's say today you are studying, let's take it. Today you are studying something called disaster management. Is it a subject? It's a subject. It's just in your syllabus it is mentioned. Is it a subject? Yes, correct. It is a subject, right? Why you are so confused? It is a subject. Right? Subject means an area of interest which is studied, right? Is it a discipline? No. It falls under a discipline called environmental governance, right? Or geography, maybe. So see, when you are trying to understand any knowledge, that knowledge is an area, a special area of interest of study, fine, but it has not developed to that extent that it can be taken independently as an area of study, right? It remains a subject. The moment it becomes an independent area of study, which can use lot of knowledge or knowledge from lot of other subjects into itself, right? Then it will become a discipline. Artificial intelligence. See, we say it's an area, emerging area, right? Is it a subject? Is it a discipline itself? No, not right now. Why? Because we are still studying computer science, engineering, information technology, or something else as a bigger discipline within which we are studying artificial intelligence. Right? But slowly and slowly, because artificial intelligence may become so big, it may start influencing so many areas that its subject matter will become so huge that now we'll have to take it out from information technology or computer science and engineering or from something else and develop it into independent disciplines. It is only a difference of degree. Are you getting? Subject बोलने का sense है student है, right? Discipline बोलने का sense है अरे learned PhD student है. See the difference. The person who is doing PhD is also student. The person who is studying BA is also student. What is the difference? The difference is of the degree. So discipline क्यों बोलते हैं कि भाई somewhere we recognize it that it has emerged as an independent area of study and it is developed enough, right, to be understood independently of anything else.
So, sir, in economics is a discipline. So, in economics, every topic can become a particular subject.
No, not necessarily. It will be subject of study, right? But not necessarily. Economics before becoming discipline could have been a subject. So when economics was not that developed to give answers to the solutions to the problems of economics. Today, you can solve a lot of problems from economics using the knowledge of economics, right? You don't have to look for other subjects. So economics is so developed that it has, for all the problems that arise in that field, it has answers to it, right? Then it can be called as discipline. But there was a time, right? There was a time when economics could not answer all the questions and it needed to borrow content from outside. Then it was a subject. So subject क्या होता है? एक special area of interest. But is that special area of interest developed enough to cater to all the issues of that particular area? जब वो हो जाता है, then we call it as a discipline. But every subject, see, every subject or every discipline which is today would have been subject somewhere previously, right? And in future also it will evolve. What it will become then? It will still remain discipline. क्योंकि डिसिप्लिन उसका सबसे इवॉल्व फॉर्म है. फॉर एग्जांपल 18, 19, 20 ईयर्स तक आपकी हाइट बढ़ती है, उसके बाद बढ़ती है? क्यों नहीं बढ़ती है? यू आर स्टिल ग्रोइंग, यू आर स्टिल एजिंग, राइट? व्हाई इट डजंट? क्योंकि वो उसका सैचुरेशन लेवल है, राइट? तो सी, वन स्पेसिफिक एरिया ऑफ स्टडी, few areas of study, subject, right? All these areas of study sophisticatedly developed, evolved to that extent, right, where they can be independently studied, or they have developed so many principles, theories, whatever, scientific knowledge. Now all these subjects together, right, they have developed to that extent that they can be distinctively defined, uniquely defined. So we say, okay, all these subjects are now at that level that we can club together and say there is a discipline called public administration, right? Now this public administration is discipline is an evolved form. Once it is evolved, now it will evolve further, right? But there is no need for a new name because it has already evolved. So discipline कहने का sense समझो, it's not about what you can say a physical condition. Sir, this is subject, this is discipline. It's not physical condition, no. कि भाई how many principles would be there so it is a subject, right? What more principles can be added so it becomes this? It's not a physical transformation. Are you getting? It is more of a qualitative change, right? So there is mathematics, there is physics, right? And there is mathematical physics. Yes, Jyoti, I have already answered. Discipline can evolve or change, but still it remains a discipline. Because that is what the highest level it can achieve, right? So it cannot beyond that. Once you have achieved that 6 feet or whatever, now you keep drinking milk, you keep drinking Bonvita, right? It won't make any change to you. That is the idea. So what is the focus of study? Once we have developed knowledge into that area, right? And that knowledge is now sophisticated enough for us to use this knowledge and understand that particular area. Now we'll say it is a discipline. People are contributing to it. Research is going on, right? We are getting a lot of financial grants in that. People are willing to join it as an area of study. See? So when something becomes discipline, it gets a lot of advantage. If it is not recognized as an independent discipline, right, there are a lot of benefits which is not given to it. For example, if PubEd was not a discipline, it would not have been an independent optional in UPSC. It would have been part of political science. फिर आप उसको एक पेपर की तरह पढ़ते कि अच्छा पॉलिटिकल साइंस का एक पेपर है PubEd. See? So when we are trying to say this, let us understand it is more about qualitative development. Right? There's nothing like qualitative, quantitative or physical development. Right? वही चीज सब्जेक्ट भी है, वही चीज डिसिप्लिन भी है. Right? But यहाँ से यहाँ तक का the distance that it has to travel, right? It requires to become more scientific, more developed. See? So any subject, right? When it moves towards becoming discipline, we say its knowledge has now evolved. It has not acquired that status whereby it could be accepted as an independent area of study. So when public administration started, or when we started to study public administration, initially it was part of political science. It was studied as part of politics, and that is why it did not have independent existence. So see, it started as a subject or special area of interest within political science. So there were many scholars now who brought it out of the fold of political science, and they said, you know, this is a very important area of study, right? And we will develop it through scientific understanding into a discipline on its own. पहले ये parts clear है कि नहीं है भाई? Don't be confused. Fine. So don't try to physically visualize subject and discipline. So there are a lot of subjects which are emerging. For example, अगर बोलते हैं women empowerment, it's a special area of interest. It's a special area of study. लेकिन क्या वो discipline है? नहीं है. Still, we are studying it as part of development, right? Or maybe we are studying it as general part of economics, part of geography, part of sociology, part of political science, part of PubEd. We are studying it in parts, right? Segments in various other subjects. So let's say tomorrow, if a scholar comes and says, no, let me bring all the content from these different subjects, right? And develop one organized content regarding what is women development, what is women empowerment. And now I designate this study or this specific content as the discipline of gender development. You see, it takes a lot of time because not everything can be studied independently. ठीक है, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस बहुत बड़ा एरिया इमर्ज हो रहा है, फाइन, बट अभी भी whenever you think of AI or MIS, you know about what is MIS? Point, or so many other techniques which are there, they still can be studied as part of computer science and engineering or information technology, because that would look like their mother discipline. Are you? So अगर कोई इंडिपेंडेंट हो सकता है जब आप when you get married and you create a household, now you become a discipline. Right? Even before that, if you are 35 years old, but you are studying under the guardianship of your parents and taking money from them, and you're staying in that home, right? You have still not become an independent entity. Are you? तो जब तक IAS नहीं बन गए, चाहे कितने भी आपने मेहनत कर लिया, whatever you have studied, right? People will say, oh, see, Mr. X's son preparing for UPSC. The day you become, what will they say? See, oh, his son, but he is IAS now. See. That independent identity, right? That is very vital aspect of a discipline. Fine. So don't be too confused about it. ठीक है, ये clear है, simple रखो. Academic discipline which has scientific knowledge, independent identity, right? So see, people have tried to understand public administration, right, from this one particular dimension, that it is a subject. Right? It is a discipline which is an area of study. So when I say academic discipline, it is something which can be studied. It is something which has a content that can be studied, right? So let us say you study public administration. What are you then? A student, maybe, an academician. So you are studying public administration. You are an academician or you are a student of public administration. So see, one way of looking at the term public administration is that it is a subject, an area of study, right? And who does it? Students, academicians, professors, right? Where it is taught? Where is this study conducted? Universities, college, research institutions, think tanks. So if I say public administration as an academic discipline, as a subject, as an area of study, where it is found as a subject in universities, college, research institutions, and likewise. So we also mean where the knowledge of PubEd is created in the subject, where the subject is studied in universities and research institutions. So can I say as an academic subject, public administration, right, is located, is situated in academic institutions. This is very important point, right? It might seem very normal to you, but try to understand. So if I say public administration as a subject is studied, developed where? In universities, college, research institutions, right? That means the location or identification of public administration as a subject, where can it be done? Where can it be found? In universities and educational institutions. You understanding this part? Okay. So what do we do there? We study. We develop theories. Theory is a descriptive knowledge, right? Maybe an explanation of a phenomenon which is happening, right? But what is our concern? What is our role? Is to develop knowledge, right? So see, one aspect of PubEd is a subject, a discipline, an academic study which is conducted in these institutions. So what we are doing there, we are developing theory. We are developing knowledge. इतना समझ में आया पहले? Now see. Now if I take it from another dimension and I say this knowledge will be applied somewhere. Why are we developing this knowledge? Like somebody said कि उसका application है, बिल्कुल correct, right? Why are we developing this knowledge? Correct. So it should be applied somewhere. No?
The in policy making is also
Leave all that. Simplify. I'm simply saying this knowledge must be applied somewhere. Policy ho, kahin ho, it doesn't matter. Right? First, let's stick to the basic. So we develop knowledge. What do we do of this knowledge? We apply this knowledge, right? Or we develop knowledge to explain what is happening. We also develop knowledge to resolve the problem we have, right? Or we have problems, but we did not know about it, so we put that into theory and say, okay, fine, this is not what we studied, okay, but something else is happening. What do? Let's borrow this understanding, put that into content. ठीक है, जैसे यूपीएससी का एग्जाम प्रीलिम्स का होता है, वैसे ही कोचिंग वाले मॉडिफाई करते हैं अपना कंटेंट, देखो हमारे कंटेंट से आया, राइट? वो कंटेंट बना 10 जून को, प्रीलिम्स हुआ 26 मई को, राइट? But they'll start claiming. You see, this is how we gave the questions. So previous test series की पीडीएफ में वर्ड फाइल में चेंज कर देते हैं क्वेश्चन, हाँ देखो ये पुराने टेस्ट में है. See, but that is how commerce works, right? इसमें कोई रॉकेट साइंस नहीं है, ये लॉजिकल है. कोई भी थोड़ा सा रैशनल स्टूडेंट होगा वो समझ जाएगा. See, so anybody who feels that whatever knowledge is being developed, right? Maybe it is not that relevant, or whatever knowledge we have developed is not good enough to understand what is happening. So sometimes when we are applying this knowledge, right, it is quite feasible, it is practical to use this knowledge. Sometimes this knowledge is out of sync to what is happening. For example, disaster management. So India में tsunami आया, nobody could comprehend tsunami. We had comprehended other types of disasters, but not tsunami. Then what did we do? We modified our disaster management strategy based on that tsunami. We started adopting. What did we adopt? We adopted a technology. What was the technology? कौन सी टेक्नोलॉजी यूज की हमने? right? Jyoti, anyone? अरे airborne warning systems, preventive disaster management strategy, कि हमें पहले से पता चल जाए, इसको हम अर्ली वार्निंग मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम बोलते हैं. So we started doing now. See, earlier we did not have that knowledge. Once we experienced it, once it happened with us, now we realized, okay, fine, now we can modify it. Once you give one mains, then you realize कि maybe what I was studying, the way I was studying is not required for this exam. Doppler radar, Utkarsh, ठीक है, but early warning systems we can use, right? Otherwise, we'll have to take science and tech class. Fine. So let's say, so many times, whatever knowledge we have developed, right, it is to be applied. And it is applied where? In administration. So in one place we are studying administration, and in another place we are doing administration. Understanding? So one aspect of knowing or defining or meaning of PubEd is it is a subject, academic discipline which is researching and studying or developing knowledge. Universities, colleges, research institutions. Another aspect we are saying public administration is also a function which is performed in the society. What are we doing? We are doing public administration. Understanding this? So in one dimension or in one aspect we are studying. In another aspect we are doing. That is activity or function. When you use the word activity or function of public administration, generally we define it by the term governance. क्या कर रहे हैं एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, राइट? कैसे कर रहे हैं? अच्छे से कर रहे हैं, राइट? अच्छे से कर रहे हैं. What are you doing? We are doing administration. How are you doing? Are you doing it well or bad? Good or bad? You tell me, how are they doing? Only media has been stopped from saying, not you. You are students, educated people. You cannot sit quiet. No. Camera घुमाऊं? भाई academicians तो बदनाम है, we can say, right? But let's say you are saying, okay, government is doing or administration is functioning in the society, it is implementing things, achieving public interest, whatever, right? How it is doing it? So when we say it is doing governance, how it is doing good governance or bad governance? So when we look at the action, right? Policy implementation, executing law, implementing this, right? Or let us say, okay, initiating these projects, making a road, developing infrastructure, whatever, managing borders, internal security, जो भी aspect है, it doesn't matter. So when we look at public administration, from another dimension, it seems to us like an activity, a set of functions which are being performed in the society. So the moment I say, okay, we are performing administrative functions. So what are we doing? Now there will be a kind of list that these are what we are doing, and this falls under the definition of public administration as a function or as an activity. So one dimension, theory, academic. Other dimension, function or activity. See what functions we perform? Welfare functions. What are welfare functions? Correct, but what kind of policy?
Providing basic necessities to the people and implementing implementation of schemes.
Correct. Fine. So let's keep it this way. One, PubEd subject. Now see, so public administration as a function and activity, where it is performed in the society, right? Now what? Purpose है public interest. So if I say public administration is a function and activity, its primary function is what? Policy implementation. Or let me simplify it and say just implementation, whatever. Right? It can be policy, law, anything. So core function, implementation. So you have now two dimensions. PubAd as subject, PubAd as function and activity. Right? Policy implementation. What is, right? What is the nature of these policies? What do they want to implement? Like I said, what we apne bola bhi. What is the focus of this implementation? Welfare, correct? So, what exactly or what kind of functions they will perform? They can perform, right? Right. There's a scholar called Gerald Kiden. Right? Kiden had talked about various functions that public administration performs, right? Or public administration as a function, as an activity in the society, what it constitutes of. So he identifies what functions may be. So he says developmental functions, right? Development, what is development? Let's write it first, you understand. So developmental functions, regulatory functions, developmental or development functions, regulatory functions, commercial functions, welfare functions. Maintenance functions, justice functions, trade functions. Now, these are some typical functions now. Now, there are a lot of evolving functions now. So, if I take guidance logic, somewhere guidance logic ends here. So, today, if I have to understand the functions of public administration, there are so many functions which are needed to serve the public interest. Public interest itself has become so diverse. Society requires multiple functions to be performed in order to be satisfied or in order to serve its interest. Society is becoming more complex, more complex, more complex. Why? क्यों complex हो रही है society?
Globalization, growth,
Correct. People are voting for Aam Aadmi Party. It's becoming so complicated society. We need so many choices today.
evolving.
E-commerce, globalization, technology, so many things are happening today, right? But let's first stick to basic thing. So public administration, right? Not just now, since long time, right? It has been performing some vital functions of the society. Right? So administration is like your vital organs, right? It has the very important function of survival. Every society over a period of time obviously has survived because of role of administration. So if society wanted security, it provided. Society wanted infrastructure, right? Physical, economic, social, right? Any type of infrastructure they provided. Society wanted control, resolution of conflicts, protecting the weak from the strong, justice, restricting the growth of rogues, ruffian elements, gundas, mafias, right? Restricting unnecessary growth of certain elements, and likewise law and order, maintenance. See, maintenance, revenue collection is a maintenance function. Why? Government imposes taxes, collected revenues, so that it can maintain the society. Right? How will it run? The basic things: sewage, lighting, electricity, road, prison, police. कहाँ से चलेगा? They need money. So see, government or public administration has been performing lot of functions, right, since long time. Even colonial administration in India, right, it was also performing so many functions. Why it was performing so many functions? Because it wanted to control the society. Now, it was not performing these functions so that it can provide us with good amenities and comfort or empower us. That was not the purpose. What was the purpose? To control us. If they could better manage it, they could easily control it. Right? So they were not working for our growth, right? For our benefit, for our development. That was not a welfare state. What is a welfare function? The welfare function is when the government spends money on development of people. It identifies their problems, tries to solve them. So it is not developing these things just for the sake of controlling the society, but for the sake of empowering the society. So welfare is a concept which includes many functions. Providing employment, welfare. Providing free education, welfare. Providing basic amenities, welfare. Right? Providing subsidies to the poor, welfare. So welfare is also a broad concept, right? But the logic is that when we use the word welfare, we are looking at a system which is working for the people, right? And not necessarily for controlling the people. You understand the difference? Where you work for the people, right? Not necessarily the people work for you. So colonial system was working because it wanted to regulate, control, and exercise its authority. Whereas today, modern governments which are working, or independent India is working because it wants to fulfill the ambition of the people. So its primary task is to develop people. Spend every money it has not to increase its authority, not to increase its stockpile, weapons, but to provide basic or better amenities to people. Not just quantitative, qualitative, right? Not just chapati, but also ghee on the chapati. So it is working tirelessly for that, right? So welfare wo concept hai where both quantitative and qualitative parameters are met. What most important is the intention of those who are in power. Welfare. What is the intention? The intention is to serve the society. See? Whereas, in opposition to welfare, if I use the word police state, what does a police state signify? The one which is creating everything, right? But its intent is not to serve the people, but intent is to exploit and control the people. So if I say colonial administration primary function was not development or welfare, but police. So police is not just about that police, right? Police state or police function means a state which is only focusing on control and regulation, right? Restricting the revolt or any kind of dissent against the power. So concept of welfare and concept of police state, they are opposite to each other. See? So it does not mean that today we don't have police. But the primary purpose of police is not to exploit people. Its purpose is to serve the people, fine, which it is not doing. Right? Basically, it is trying to serve its own interest. So see, so development function, yes, it performs, right? Provides health, education, infra, so many other things. Regulatory functions, yes, it provides security, it provides law and order, it protects weak, and so many other things. So through authority, it tries to manage things in the society. That is called regulatory. Internal security, regulatory, right? Law and order, regulatory, and likewise. Commercial functions, yes, government runs transport. Government used to run aviation, not anymore. Government used to run or government run banks. Hmm? Scooters India, telecom, right? BSNL. कौन है उसके सब्सक्राइबर्स? Government employees, right? Civil servants. Right? So the moment you will join the civil services, they will give you a special gift. BSNL SIM card और ये BSNL number भी. So the part of the money which is earned by you goes back to the government at least. Fine. So see, they may run certain commercial functions, PSUs, public sector undertaking, commercial functions. Railways, a part of railways, commercial function. Tourism, right? Infrastructure, so many areas. SEZ, you know what is SEZ? Special economic zones, right? Lot of other investments, FDI, lot of commercial functions government also performs. See, it has outsourced the management of airports. What is government getting in return? Profit sharing, benefits, infrastructure management. Government को नहीं करना है. Government doesn't need to do that, right? So see, it also tries to perform commercial functions, right? Selling petrol, oil, right? Energy. Is government not earning money? It is earning money. Right? Toll taxes, in whatever public-private partnership it is, right? Government is also earning money. Surcharge, cess, so many other things are there. So it's not that government doesn't perform commercial function. The only thing is the government is not efficient in doing that. That is a drawback, fine, but still. So state road transport, right? Aviation, बहुत सारे areas है जहाँ commercial functions, right? Space, Indian Space Research Organization now, ISRO, right? So our satellite launches or our unmanned missions, they are based on what? They are based on commercial aspect also. We are showcasing our technology to a lot of countries in the world which are technically much more disadvantaged than us. So we are creating a lot of commercial market for space technology. Many countries would like to borrow it from us. So भाई moon mission जो है, one of the most cheapest mission in the world. Definitely people will want to buy that technology. They would want to at least borrow our expertise. इसको बोला जाता है technology transfer. Right? India had recently agreement with US, France, Israel, right? So we had technology transfer agreements with these countries, right? And likewise. So let us say, so it performs lot of functions, right? Which also have commercial implication. Welfare, just now we talked about. Maintenance, law and order, defense, security, justice. Now see, it manages a system, an elaborate system of justice. Right? When you are a collector, right, as a district collector, right? You are a public administrator. What do you do as district collector? Then you are called a DM, district magistrate. Then you are called a deputy commissioner. Why you are called so many names? You perform multiple functions, right? As a district collector, you are collecting revenue, right? Taxes, revenues, so many other material or monetary functions you have, right? As a district magistrate, right, you are basically, what are you doing? You are working like an executive magistrate. An executive magistrate is not a judicial magistrate. A judicial magistrate is a judge who is trained in legal knowledge, who gives the exam based on legal aptitude. Whereas you are giving an exam based on generalist aptitude. So you qualify, you get recruited to civil services, whereas specialized people get recruited to judiciary. So they have or they are trained in judicial knowledge. You are not trained in judicial knowledge, you are trained in administrative knowledge. So you are not actually a judge. What are you? You are a semi-judge, para or quasi, that is the word. So where you are semi-judge, where you are used as judge, so you are called 144 is one function. Where else? One function. What else? See, right? As an executive magistrate, you perform, right, a sum of the functions just like a judge. In 1772, the collector's office was created by Warren Hastings, British Warren Hastings. You must be knowing him. Fine. जब रॉबर्ट क्लाइव के साथ लड़ाई हुई, fine. Later on, when Diwani rights were given, fine. I always disliked history, right? But it's okay. But because of UPSC, I had to study. Fine. So you see, so magistrate or district magistrate or collector's office was created in 1772 by Warren Hastings, and he was given multiple functions. These multiple functions included administrative, law and order, judicial. Since then, he is also called district magistrate. But in 1773 itself, a regulating act was brought. Under regulating act, they created judicial system. Right? We established a Supreme Court at Kolkata and designated Governor of Bengal as Governor General of Bengal or Governor General of India. बंगाल, राइट? उस समय तो इंडिया था ही नहीं, है ना? अभी हुआ है. भारत भी नहीं था, इंडिया में सब अभी हुआ है. So logically, right, when they created this post, they gave it a lot of judicial functions. What of judicial functions? For example, British time पे, in fact, Mughal time पे, okay, there became or there emerged a custom of giving agricultural loans to the farmers. तो फार्मर्स को एग्रीकल्चरल लोन्स दिया जाता था, दैट इज कॉल्ड टकावी. Even today we give. Obviously now we have modified a lot, we have a lot of schemes today, but in general, let us say a farmer was given loans for agricultural purpose, right? Once the loan is given, you will charge interest on that. Even if that is interest-free loan, it can be interest-free loan. It depends on government, or it can be on soft interest, non-market rate. It can be. Now there will be a timeline to return the loan. There will be a scrutiny verification to give the loan, and likewise. Fine. So these are what kind of functions? नहीं जुडिशियल नहीं है, ये एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव फंक्शंस है. Imagine now that this person cannot repay the loan. right? And may not have given the interest. Now, the government needs to take a decision regarding that. So let's say SDM or sub-divisional magistrate or some lower level official, tehsildar, naib tehsildar, right? They come up with the idea, no, no, no. We have to revoke this person's loan. Fine, they are not giving it back, right? तो जो revenue records maintain करता है कानूंगो, right? Inspector बोलते हैं revenue inspector. He maintains the account and he says if I see we are not getting any benefit out of this, we have to revoke this loan of these farmers, right? Now these farmers, obviously, you are not in a colonial system, right? You are not in an autocratic system. So these farmers require now an appeal. So let's say the administrator writes that this person's loan has been revoked. He no more gets the protection under this scheme. Now he wants to appeal. Where will he appeal? Will that farmer go to the court now? Very difficult, right? So there is a system of administrative appeal. He will appeal now to SDM, right? So SDM also will hold his court, known as SDM's court, right? Then DM's court, likewise appeal will go. Somebody needs compensation, right? The fasal has been destroyed because of monsoon. Now he needs a compensation. How much compensation? Now see. So the administrator comes, he measures it and says, the loss has been only this much. Compensation under this scheme. Maximum can be 5 lakhs, but he should be given only 1 lakh rupees. Now he wants to appeal against it. Land measurement, allotment of land, right? Title of land, land holding. ऐसे बहुत सारे problems. Industrial pollution. Location of industry, right? Specific grievances arising, complaints arising out of that. So many problems. So see, when we are doing administration, we also experience a lot of problems or conflicts between administration and citizen, right? There now, the administrators also act now as quasi-judges or semi-judges. That is why they are referred to as magistrate. Magistrate is actually not a judge. That is why lower level judges, they are called as magistrates, first class magistrate. This magistrate, they are actually not judges. The term judge is and should be generally used only after ADJ. Additional district जब कोई बनता है और district judge जब कोई बनता है, sessions court judge. Then only the word judge is used. Below that, all are magistrates. So magistrates क्या होते हैं? Basically वो judges नहीं होते हैं, right? But they are more than administrators and they are less than judges. So see, when collector functions as executive magistrate, he performs the functions which are called quasi-judicial functions. Licensing है, बहुत सारे ऐसे, laws under which he has those powers. Confiscating the property, many things he has, right? Then डिप्टी कमिश्नर, सॉरी ये कब होता है भाई? हाँ, but ये primarily law and order के लिए. That is why the name deputy commissioner and that is why the name commissioner of police. So when he is performing judicial functions, magisterial functions, he is DM. When he is performing revenue functions, he is collector. When he is performing law and order functions, specifically, he is deputy commissioner. So CRPC, IPC, Section 8 बोलता है कि भाई SP should assist the district magistrate or district deputy commissioner in managing law and order in the district. So under several sections, Section 23, Section 8, the SSP is obliged to report to the collector, but SSP is not subordinate to the collector. That is also very clear cut. But he is supposed to comply with the general directions given by the collector. So if collector sends the SSP a message that there is a general law and order problem, we cannot allow this to happen. So SSP will deny giving the permission for a jagrata which was supposed to happen. So that decision is taken by SP, for example, right? But the message has been given by collector or deputy commissioner. So when he acts as one of the, you know, central figures in the district, managing law and order, right? Imposing curfew, managing certain things, public order, right? Then he acts like deputy commissioner. You see, can you say कि भाई collector अब DM या IS जो है multi functionary है, see? So public administration or administrative systems, they also give or provide justice, right? Lot of systems are emerging today, right? We are having new types of systems today called tribunals. We also refer to them as administrative tribunals. What are tribunals? पॉलिटी वाले बच्चे हैं, बताओ. Correct. But there's not courts actually. They are quasi-judicial bodies. See? Placing? See, obviously it is developmental function. राइट तो वो मोस्टली आप इसको मान सकते हैं कि भाई वो डिस्ट्रिक्ट कलेक्टर है, डिप्टी कमिश्नर, दोनों मान सकते हैं. सी यहाँ भी लॉ एंड ऑर्डर इशू आ सकता है व्हेन यू आर डूइंग समथिंग डेवलपमेंट फंक्शन जनरली, बट कलेक्टर परफॉर्म्स डेवलपमेंट फंक्शंस ओवरऑल, राइट? व्हेन वी यूज all of them are integrated so much that you cannot separate them, right? Just for our simple understanding we have divided them. All the three nomenclatures are used for the same person. So when you say Jila Magistrate, finish, right? Some people have already said that why don't you use the word Chief District Officer rather than using the word Magistrate? Why? Magistrate, Collector, they give us the reference of the colonial system. So make him Chief District District Adhikari, yeah? Mukh Jila Adhikari. So they have supported this idea that these names seem to be more colonial in nature. So if he is doing any developmental activity, right, he can be called as DM or district collector or deputy commissioner, doesn't matter, right? But in every of the activity that he is doing, there will always be these implications. Right? तो कहीं ना कहीं जुडिशियल इशू होगा, उसका डेवलपमेंटल इशू होगा, रेवेन्यू इशू होगा, कोई ना कोई इशू होगा. सी व्हाई आज जो है टुडे व्हेन यू आर सेइंग कि भाई रोड बनती है तो कलेक्टर होगा, क्या होगा? सी टुडे दैट वर्क हैज बीन गिवन टू समवन एल्स, यू नो दैट. Since 1970s, the collector's role of development has been taken up by CDO, called as Chief Development Officer. So collector is no more responsible directly for development. 1987 onwards, the rural development as a function is now being transferred slowly to Panchayati Raj institutions. So 1992 के बाद, when we had Panchayati Raj Act, the collector's function of rural development has also been taken away from him and slowly has now been given to the Gram Panchayat or Gram Sabha. So you have to understand this way that as of now, if we see the developmental role or the role of collector in development has been minimized. अब उसके पास बेसिक यही फंक्शंस हैं, उसका डेवलपमेंट फंक्शंस को साइड कर दिया गया. Because development is such a huge function. A person who is already overburdened, right, cannot perform development also. Fine? You understanding? So see, today as tribunals are emerging, right? Tribunals कहाँ है अभी? क्या होता है? See, tribunals are, just now we said, these are hybrid bodies, hybrid organizations between a purely judicial body and a purely administrative body. Let's say district collector administrative है, district judge judicial है. Let us collaborate them. दोनों को मिक्स करके नींबू पानी बनाते हैं. So अब देखो क्या बनेगा. कलेक्टर एंड जज क्या बनेगा? जलेक्टर. हाँ, क्या बनेगा भाई? ठीक है, correct. So but what do we call them? Let's say, who are these people now? So we use the word administrators as judges. So somewhere we use the word administrative magistrates, administrative judges. They are not actually judges. So if we create a hybrid of a judicial type system with an administrative type system, we call that as tribunal. So tribunal क्या है? Court type body, but not court. A court type body headed not by a judge but by an administrator, or by the administrator as well as the judges. Like I said, it is hybrid. It can be headed by an administrator, it can be headed by a combination of administrator and judge, but it cannot be just headed by a judge unless it is made by law. क्योंकि जज अगर हेड करेगा तो वो जुडिशियल बॉडी हो जाएगी. But your National Green Tribunal, NGT, formed in 2005 by the NGT Act, is a tribunal headed by a judge. Right? Because they made a law, then they created a tribunal, and Supreme Court gave an approval. कि भाई now this will be the highest body dealing with environmental conservation and environmental issues. Don't come to us for those issues. You will understand over a period of time, right? There are a variety of institutions which fall in the complex definition. They are not simply defined as judicial body or administrative body, right? They are defined as quasi-judicial or quasi-legislative or quasi-executive or whatever. So these bodies all somewhere, right, work in collaboration with administration. So now an administrator who was implementing policy, right, may also be involved in providing justice through tribunals. So tribunals are unique type of bodies which are created to resolve administrative disputes. For example, you are going in a train, right, and you are not going in a train, let's change it, right? Let's say that particular politician or minister is going in the train, he falls off the train, right, and he dies. Now his kith and kin claim compensation, right? Nobody pushed him. He was, let's say, without ticket. Normally they are, right? So let's say he is without ticket and he is going, right? And now his kith and kin, because he falls from the door, right, gets crushed by the train itself, dies, whatever. Now people, his kith and kin, have imposed a liability on the railways. Right? They filed a case that it is your liability and you have to pay. Right? Or railway should be punished. Can railway be punished? नहीं? क्यों? ऐसा क्या रेलवे में? Sure. You guys have studied polity or not? You started abhi. So how much you know? Kunjam. थोड़ा अभी आता है बस. इन्ना है. वो इतना कितना है? कुछ तो पढ़ा होगा. नहीं पढ़ा. स्टेट क्या है? Definition क्या है? See, articles क्या है? Now when you think of fundamental rights, okay, ये कितना बड़ा ये डाउट है, क्वेश्चन है क्या अभी? Sir, post 73rd, 74th amendment, the development functions are devolved to the third tier of government. Please comment if this devolution, these functions is more democratic, as these functions now come under the purview of elected representative over non-elected bureaucrats, at least on paper. Yes, correct, Ujjwal, but obviously we need some time to reach there, right? It is more about decentralization of power. As of now, our focus of study is very restricted, right? So we'll talk about it, don't worry. We are focusing only on the idea that today the developmental functions have been reduced from or taken away from collector and given to other bodies. Right now our focus of discussion is not this. ठीक है, अभी हम subject हैं, discipline नहीं है. ठीक. So at least you accept it कि भाई हमारे discussion का focus क्या है? The functions of administration, right? So let's stick to that. Everything in detail we'll do, don't worry. Fine, you will become Mohit Bhattacharya Junior, right? Once you go out. Right? So, logically, see, when we are saying that now this damage or compensation has been claimed, for example, right? Listen to the example first. So you are now seeking a compensation, or the kith and kin is seeking the compensation, or government says that he did not have a valid ticket. So can he be treated as passenger of the train? If you don't have ticket, एक ऐसा केस है अभी है ना बहुत दो तीन कई केसेस है ऐसे some courts high courts have agreed that no, he was a passenger. Just on the basis of not having a ticket, you cannot deny him the right or compensation, right? Certain cases it has not agreed, right? So let's say if you do not possess the ticket, should you be considered a passenger? Prima facie, what is prima facie meaning? Prima facie, on the face of it, in the primary instance. CSAT भी improve होगा, don't worry. And PubEd is like that only, right? So, on the face of it, primary instance, but it does not seem that he was a passenger, for example, right? But nobody can deny that this person was crushed by train. Let's say he was not a passenger, he was a passerby, right? Then also he was crushed by train. Well, obviously, government will say he was not following safety norms. We have already written everywhere, don't cross the signal, don't go through the crossing. Is a government claim karega, right? But see, will you take now this problem to the court? The court will say, we don't have time for all this. Go and get compensation from the government, right? Or it will start scolding the government that why don't you have a system for this? Now see, so government will create, let's say, a body. And it will, obviously, that is already authorized by the court. So it will ask the court or the constitution that can we create a body, right, which is not judicial, but which can obviously give some judgments like judiciary. What is that judgment? Let us say the amount of compensation. अब ये judgment ही तो हुआ. Why we call it judgment? You have to follow it. But it's a solution. If you are claiming that I have lost my legs in this accident or my kith and kin has died in this accident, I claim compensation. Now that body says, okay, fine, this is the compensation. Then what do? You have to accept. Or if you don't accept, go and appeal. But somewhere that body is giving you a solution. So what is the nature of that body? The nature of that body is quasi-judicial, semi-judicial, because it is giving a judgment. It's not a court, right? But it's a kind of body which gives judgment related to specific problems. What are those specific problems? Related to railways. Same way, now government says there will be a lot of problems related to telecom, right? Related to infrastructure, related to this development, related to this. So what do? Let us create lot of quasi-judicial bodies or semi-judicial bodies where administrators and retired judges both can sit and resolve the problem rather than going to the court. Because if you go every time to the court for these problems which can be settled by the administration itself with little wisdom, right? Then what will happen? You will reduce a lot of burden on the court. So see, 1960s, 70s, in fact, 1900 onwards itself, you'll find many countries, obviously not India, but many countries started bringing these reforms in their administrative system. And they said that administration can provide solutions also, not just implementation of policies or implementation of laws. It can also provide solutions for the problems that will emerge in a particular sector. Okay. So see, these tribunals are created for what? Dealing with problems, dealing with complaints, dealing with issues related to certain sectors, right? Which require or which are in the nature of quasi-judicial problems. They are not purely judicial problems. क्यों? Court में justice होता है. solution नहीं मिलता है. You understand? Court is for justice, not for giving solution. Right? Solution hota hai, he killed him. Right? So, okay, he can come and kill someone in my family. It's okay. Tit for tat. Or solution hota, okay, I killed him, it's fine, I'll pay the damage. Court says no. Right? You have to go into the jail. Why? Because that is what justice is. Justice is not a compensation. Right? But you see, if somebody acquires your land, if you do some environmental damages, if something is broken, your wall is broken while government was making the road, what do you need? Do you need justice or you need compensation? Compensation. So there are a lot of administrative problems and issues where you need compensation, solution, not justice. Justice is more ideal notion. See? So see, quasi-judicial bodies or tribunals they are called, right? Common sense term. So tribunals have been created because of this reason, that there are a lot of specialized problems that are occurring in different sectors. To deal with them, we don't need to go to the court every time. So see, this is one different nature of function which has now been added into administration. And in detail, we'll study, there's an entire chapter on that. Right? Administrative law. Right? Entire chapter dedicated to this idea. So, see, so logically, right, when we think of the administration, there are certain roles or functions which have already been established, and there are which are evolving even today, right? So, see, today we are creating a lot of other mechanisms, a lot of new bodies which are dealing with various problems of the society. They may not be purely administrative in nature. They may have character of a chameleon. What is a chameleon? You know that? क्या है? Correct. Right. You're right. What kind of reptile? Keeps changing color. Why? It's doing disco light or what? Changes color as per the environment. Right? Where it is residing. So public administration has a chameleonic character. That is one term which is used. That how do you interpret PubAd? See, public administration is performing a lot of functions, and now a lot of functions are being added. So can we define exact functions of PubAd? No. Why? Because it keeps evolving, keeps evolving, keeps evolving, right? It becomes sometimes legislative in nature, sometimes judicial in nature, sometimes executive in nature, and sometimes something else. So what is its character? Its character is chameleonic character. Right? So we use this term to define its constant changing nature. And change is for good, not for bad, right? But you'll understand all this, don't worry. Right. So let's
Creating more tribunals will decrease the pending cases of courts.
yes, it may. Definitely. Why not? Yes, that is the idea. It will reduce lot of non-necessary functions or lot of non-necessary cases from the courts, and it will move them to their specialized areas. Right? Why should court be bothered that what should be the compensation given to the farmer? Right? Why can't a government which is established by the people can decide that? So obviously there are a lot of functions. Recently, Supreme Court has already said, "Ki bhai, don't bring emotional issues with us. India, Bharat, whatever, do it yourself." So it is right. A lot of problems which courts are facing today is maybe because we have taken those issues to the courts. So if we create better tribunals, specialized tribunals, we will unburden a court to a large extent. Right? But that debate is to be done later, right? You'll understand there are a lot of debates in that. So let's say, right, quasi-judicial functions are also emerging, right? And these functions, fine, right? And these functions now, right, they reflect that public administration is now evolving, right, or changing in terms of its functions. Chameleonic character of PubAd. Will you remember this line? We'll write it also, don't worry, but will you remember in general, right? So it has an evolving nature. See, pehla question UPSC ka this year, same question, right? See, first class you can solve that question, right? Why are you bothered? See, so logically, the quasi-judicial function is also emerging, right? Now there are some quasi-legislative function. What is legislature doing? Now see, administration's role was implementation, right? Execution of policy. It need not involve itself in lawmaking, right? It should not involve itself in judicial function. We have talked about in the first separation of power. Right? Plus administration is something which is created by the government. So already status is quite low compared to other three organs. See? So legislative function is performed by the legislature or parliament. Right? What is that function? Lawmaking. Kya function hai? See? What do you understand by the function lawmaking? Right? We were coming to that polity. Hai na? So let us say Article 12. You've read some articles? नहीं? अच्छा अभी लैंड हुए हो कल ओल्ड राजेंद्र नगर में कब आए हो कुछ दिन हो गए ठीक है किताबें ले लिया took some books fine so now you should read let us say fine you know at least what are articles A and D eh? I've studied from St. Joseph Dehradun वहाँ पे कुछ नहीं आया पर इंग्लिश आना जरूरी है सी So we have studied in those schools where English was compulsory. Everything else, maths कर लेना नहीं हो कोई बात नहीं. That is why we came to know about all the functions that used to happen, all the festivals that used to happen in Britain, but we never knew what was happening in India. Right? So let's say you have talked about articles, right? We have some articles. Article means what, right? Generally in English language also article means fixed. That is what article is. So article 1, 2, 3, 4, 395. Right? Lakshmi Kant will say that there are 450 plus articles. It's correct, right? If I calculate them individually with their sub provisions. But the title of none of the article is 396. The title of the article is 395 only. But कोई 396th article है? नहीं है. So what he is referring to or what these books are referring to is the number of changes or amendments done. So original number, quantitative figure, right, is 400 something. But in terms of title, it is 395 only. Why this has been done? To retain the original character. Right? Somebody writes a book, fine. Now tomorrow Lakshmi Kant's son comes, right, and he says, "Ki kitab bahut chalti, let me improve it further now." Right? So instead of having that essence of the book, now he modifies the entire book, changes the entire character, adds huge volumes to that. Nobody starts buying it. People stop buying it. Why? He has changed the fundamental character of the book. That is why it is very important to keep the fundamental character. The UPSC exam has some fundamental character. Right? The quantitative changes have no meaning in that. Right? So you retain the fundamental character. Scholarly nature of exam, scholarly nature of exam. आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते उसमें. Fine, because you have to attempt the exam. So let's say you have these articles. Every article, right, reflects particular intention of the constitution maker. These articles 395 are divided into parts. How many parts are there? 22. Okay. Let's say. So these 22 parts, right, are like segregation, simplification. Obviously, you cannot put 395 in one part, right? You have to put them into different parts so that you can simplify its reading and understanding. Right? So articles parts gets fixed now. Then you have schedules 12, right? What are these schedules? Now you have technically, let us say, 22 volumes, 22 parts, right? With one to this article in this part, one to this article in this part, and likewise, right? Now, when you are making an amendment to the Constitution, right, you will have to write, let us say, fine, your father has written the wasiyat, right? Your father has already written the wasiyat for you, or for you and your brother, right? But your brother starts using this white ink here, and somehow removes this and writes something else there. Will it not be overwriting? So original constitution is written. Now you do an amendment. What are you doing? Overwriting. So when you make an amendment, what do? You just mention it here. And whatever you have to describe about it, you put it in a schedule. So schedule is an addendum, right? It's something extra, added. Now that is the structure of constitution. So see, as you keep amending, you can put that into description, you can put in the schedule, right? In the original text, only you make minimum changes, right? Adding this article, right? 19(1) G moved from here to here, right? Ye repeal hoga, finish. Now, what is the description of that article, right? Article 300A becomes the right to property. So, what exactly does it mean? Now, it will be elaborated somewhere else. So, we are doing it not to change the original character or structure of this constitution. That is why constitution is considered sacrosanct. Right? It is something which should be morally preserved. So let's say, so Article 12 जो है Constitution में 13, right? You know, you understood what is an article. There are parts, right? So let's say Article 12 and 13. 12 deals with the definition of state. Right? In general, what is state? State is an abstract term which deals with the system of power in any society, right? But Article 12 in Indian Constitution, what does it define? It defines Indian state. Right? What is the extent, what is the scope of this state, which we call as India or the Republic of India? Right? Or Republic of Bharat, you can say, no doubt. Right? So logic is, right, we are defining it for the purpose of understanding. So Article 12, when we define the state, right, what is the definition, you know, anybody? Union legislature plus union executive. Now see, it is defining very specifically कि भाई state क्या है इंडिया में. Union legislature, union executive, state legislature, state executive, all local bodies, municipal boards, whatever, right? Semi-government institutions, whatever, and any other organization authorized or declared by parliament by law. If these four conditions are fulfilled, it will be a state. Why we need to define it? Only we can understand when we read Article 13, right? Article 14. 13 defines law. Now, what is a law? Anything that is made by the government and the state. See, we have defined the state. Logically, whatever the state makes becomes the law, right? Or whatever legislature and executive makes can be considered as law. See? So, when we study Article 13, we realize that in Indian context, even the legislature can make laws and even the executive can make laws. Ordinance is an executive law made by president and governor. Right? Statute is a law made by parliament. Amendment can be done by union parliament, not even by state legislature. Any amendment to the constitution cannot be done by the state assembly. It can only be done by union parliament. So when you are defining what is a law, you also realize that law can be made by legislature and also it can be made by executive. And both are in the same article. That means both have almost similar status. Otherwise, laws made by the executive would have been defined somewhere else, and law made by legislature would have been defined here. See, are you able to understand this logic? See, so when you listen, when you see, read these articles, And then you seek, okay, fine, why Article 12 is defined, why Article 13 is defined, and then why fundamental rights are there. So Article 14 to 35 directly, or extended form Article 12 to 35, you have fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are the rights that you have for individual protection of your liberty from the state. What is the state? Article 12. Understanding? So why you are defining the state? So that we know from whom our fundamental rights are protected. How the state can take away my fundamental rights? By making laws. That is why we are defining Article 13 now, law. So this state can take away our fundamental rights by making these laws. And so that is why we need to understand how we can protect our fundamental rights from this state by these or from these laws. Now you understand, if the definition of the state increases, right? If it expands, what will happen? The rights of people will shrink. If the definition of law expands, the fundamental rights of the people shrink. That is why court comes to the rescue of interpretation of Article 21, right to life. क्या है भाई, सब कुछ है life. Fine, law बनाते रहो अब now. See, that is why court judicial activism is needed. That is why judicial intervention is needed. Because unless judiciary comes to the rescue, the government can make a law and restrict our fundamental right. Nobody can stop it except Keshwanan Bharti case, which says, okay, these things you cannot disturb, everything else you can do. See? So don't misinterpret Keshwanan Bharti case also. It is saying these are the things you cannot do, rest everything you can do. See? Because the basic doctrine or basic structure is not defined. It is just elaborated, but it is not an exhaustive list. It keeps evolving over a period of time. Yes. So see, when I said, can you file a case against the railways? Yes, you can. The moment you define the state, that very moment you define executive as part of the state. What is railways? Executive. So to protect your fundamental rights from the executive, what will you do? You can file a case in the court under Article 32. Writs. Fine. So to protect your fundamental rights, you file case under Article 32. Railway क्या है? State है. Simple. Right? See? So when you study fundamental rights, obviously when you study, you will, if your teacher is obviously smart enough, he will teach you that there are two kinds of persons: legal persons and natural persons. State is a legal person. Corporate is a legal person. I have to take compensation from Tata. Tata is a legal person, not a natural or biological person. Right? State is a legal person. Whereas some XYZ may be a natural person. Right? So we have protection from both. A person violates my right or violates the right to or protection against untouchability. He is a natural person. I am seeking protection of my rights from this natural person, which government should provide. So see, you'll go against him that he has violated this protection. But if you want to claim compensation from the government, you'll go against the government to the court. Government is a legal person. Where is the government? Is any individual government? No. Government is just a entity, right? Faceless entity. You cannot go and sue the president. He is the government, he is the executive, or governor, he is the executive. Fine. So see, you can go against legal persons and natural persons both. Right? Obviously, there are certain restrictions. Right? You cannot go against the government in criminal cases, but you can go against the government in civil cases. Civil cases where you seek compensation. Criminal cases where you will send someone to prison. Whom will you send to the prison in government? No one. That is why president and governor enjoy immunity. Otherwise, people file the case against state and they will say, he is the state. send him to the court. That is why they are enjoying immunity. So it's quite logical that you can file case against the state also. But in civil cases you claim compensation for damages. Correct? Itna samajh mein aaya? Fine. So see, now administration. So see, law making. So legislature makes law. What does it mean? Can you interpret what does this simply mean? You always talk about legislature making the law. What does this mean? That there is a system which authorizes what is to be done, what is not to be done. There is a system which authorizes what is to be done, what is not to be done, what is right, what is wrong, what are the legal boundaries we must follow. There's a system, fine. Why we need a system? Why are you so serious? Huh? I'm not asking about your affair. Unless I need to tell it to your parents. Right? So, tell me anything that you. Why do we need a system for authorizing? Simple hai bhaiya, we follow rule of law. We are not going to make authorization ourselves. We cannot allow a person to make authorization. There will be a system. What is that system? Let's say parliament. Why parliament will authorize? Because we are a rule of law system. We are not rule of men system or rule of human system. Right? There will be a system, institution which will make law. Why it will make a law? Because we are a rule of law system. Everything that we do must be authorized by law. The system which is making the law also is following the law. See, that is why we have an elaborate mechanism to make law. We cannot just authorize anyone to do it. Fine? We need to follow a system, procedure, transparency, checks and balances, control, monitoring. We follow all that. So the moment I say legislature will authorize, I mean there is rule of law. There is superiority of law. Right? So legislature makes the law. Executive implements the law. Right? So Prime Minister, President, Council of Minister, they will implement the law along with the administration. So let's say government says we have to protect the rights of the tribals. How will government protect it? Right? Do you have any ideas? But let's say, yeah, you're right. But let us say we want to protect it, right? What is the concern? Why do we need to protect the rights of the tribal? What is the issue? Huh? Correct. They are vulnerable, right? So they are vulnerable in what sense? Culturally, demographically, technologically. They are not using these touch screens. Wi-Fi नहीं है वहाँ पे. क्या problem बताओ? What is the issue?
They're cut off from the mainstream.
Correct. In non-inclusive development. But don't use the word technological. Eh? Don't take this template. I know that person who keeps making template. Huh? So when we say the tribals, they are cut culturally from the mainstream first. Right? They face regional exclusion. Their geography, their territory, their habits, customs, right? They are isolated from rest of the country. Then they face linguistic barriers. Customs, habits, mannerism, language. Obviously, there are a lot of barriers they face, right? Then they also face the conventional barriers, traditional barriers. What are these? They follow a particular pattern of life. We don't follow that. We feel that is backwardness, right? And they don't know what is modernity. So there's a huge gap in understanding now. See, let's say, so I focus, my purpose is to protect tribals. And there are so many reasons for that, right? But what is the focus? What is actually to be done? So let's say executive says we'll make a policy, right? This policy is like action of the government, right? So action and framework is policy. So let us make this policy, right? What do? let us rehabilitate these tribals, right, into this particular area, provide them with pakka houses, an organized living, tapped water, this. Let's see. If we give them this comfort, probably they'll be willing to leave that nomadic life. Now, government wants to make a policy. Government makes a policy, for example. Now, tribals are protected under the constitution, right? Fifth schedule, sixth schedule. There are two schedules dedicated to the tribal population in India, right? And also Article 371, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, K tak hai. So they are protected under that, जिसमें Jammu Kashmir भी था 370. So they are protected under fifth schedule, sixth schedule, 371, and likewise various other provisions. Now see, now the government makes the policy, rehabilitate them. They are protected under it. Someone files the case in the court that whatever government is doing is not correct. Right? Government is violating the protection we have under the fifth schedule and sixth schedule. See. Now what will government do? Government seeks authorization now. So who will make the law? Legislature. That if the government wants to implement a policy, execute something, it also needs legal authorization. Right? There are certain things which are already authorized. And there are certain things which require authorization every time the government wants to do it. So, see, executive needs to seek approval legally from the legislature. If legislature makes the law, to an extent, the judiciary will not try to intervene. But just now we read Article 12 and 13. We have protection of fundamental rights from both laws made by executive as well as judiciary. As well as legislature. So judiciary protects us from both. So the moment legislature makes the law, and if we feel it violates a fundamental right, again we'll go to the court. So this process goes on. So there is an independent system to make law. Why? So that whatever policy government wants to pursue, whatever actions government wants to take, even that should also be verified and scrutinized by representatives of the people, that is legislature. So you see, lawmaking should be exclusive function of legislature, right? Judiciary must be allowed to interpret their actions on the basis of whether they are constitutional or not, or they are in public interest or not. See? So judiciary's role comes later. First, the primary role of governance or governing is of legislature and executive. So now, today what is happening? Let's say 1960s, 70s onwards or post-Second World War. The role of the administration becomes so prominent. We have written the word welfare state or welfare. Welfare means almost every walk of life of society, the role of administration is visible, right? We use the term womb to tomb, right? Before birth, after death. The administration is always visible. Your birth certificate authorized by municipality, death certificate authorized by municipality. Fine. Your high school certificate authenticated by government, right? Your name authenticated by government. Your marriage certificate authenticated by government, right? Whatever, your getting a job, government job, your verification, local intelligence verification done by the government. See, passport, TDS, ration card, Aadhaar, everything. Right? Whether you are a private entrepreneur or corporate CEO or you are a public servant, doesn't matter. Every aspect of your life, right, is very closely influenced, monitored, and somewhere authenticated by government. That is public administration. So on behalf of the executive, the government, who is working? Administration. So see, in your life, in every aspect of your life, it is invading that life. Maybe not necessarily privacy, right? It is maintaining the privacy, but it is invading your life, authenticating your life. So can you eliminate public administration? No. So see, this welfare state, the concept of welfareism comes, and people say that government performs all the function: regulatory, commercial, economic, right, trade, developmental, justice, every function. It's not leaving anything. So it doesn't say that private sector will not be there, but it says it's okay. Let them be there, but we'll also perform most of the functions. So see, as government becomes or administration becomes omnipresent everywhere, right? It's like Bhagwan, har jagah hai na? We don't know whether he's there or not, but still we say that God is everywhere, right? So it became like a God. It's omnipresent, right? You want health, go to government. You want health certificate, go to government. You died, you want a death certificate, go to government. You want land acquisition, go to government. You want this education, go to the government. You want to see everything. So there's a very famous statement, right? That earlier people looked to the God, then people look to the state. Right? So Rousseau and many philosophers have said, Voltaire and all, okay, eventually the state replaces the God. So that is the idea of welfare state, monopoly of government. So when government monopolizes, automatically government's administration monopolizes. You understand? That is what is welfare state. So welfare, where every activity of the society is more or less delivered by the government. And it is not just delivered, it is technically controlled also, because it is the one which is delivering everything. So if you say, I want education, government. If government doesn't want to provide you education, you will not get education. So government has monopoly and government also has control, both. So when there is, technically, you understand, only one service provider, right? When there was only one coaching or two coaching here, right? Obviously, whatever they were teaching was monopoly, right? Nobody could have evaluated it, कि भाई सही है, नहीं है, गलत है, whatever. Monopoly. So whatever service government gives, you have to accept it. It's good also, bad also. Later on, it is criticized, right? But initially, obviously, we needed someone to provide or fulfill the needs of the society. So we say welfare state. So 1945, 60s around, you will find the expansion of welfare functions. State started performing, government started performing multiple functions, especially in developing countries. Why? Because we had just become independent. There was no private sector. There was no economic development. Who will provide the basic needs? Government. That is why government became so powerful here. So see, in many developing countries, or in general many countries, the administration becomes so influential. Public administration as a system, it becomes so influential that most of the functions were performed by administration. As it started performing various functions: health, education, development, law and order, security, policing, everything. Right? So let's say I imagine public administration, right? I imagine a system. Let's say let's equate it to a person for simplification. So let's say public administration is like Khali, it's a big system. The person, right? Now this person performs multiple functions. Is it not possible that over a period of time we will become dependent on it? Because it is performing everything. See? Government becomes dependent on administration. Administration is the official part. People selected on the basis of exam. State is the political part. So see, there is one perspective, one approach which says that as administrative functions or administration's function becomes complicated, they become so expanded in the society, the monopoly of administration increases. And because administration performs so many functions, it becomes highly specialized. The state and society both get dependent on administration. Why? Because see, one who is doing it becomes more specialized. So administration is considered to be specialized system, recruited on the basis of merit, coming through an examination, much more learned than the politicians or parliamentarians. So when you compare administration with executive and legislature, administration seems to be more specialized, at least more educated, right? And somewhere coming through a more rigorous process. But if politicians are supposed to get through an exam, right? They will never reach the parliament. Many of them, right? Few of them, right? Shashi Tharoor can top. That's okay, right? But logically, if we keep an examination, right, majority of them will never reach the parliament. So you cannot say that the bureaucrats or the civil servants, right, they do not have that kind of intelligence. They have. And once they start performing this task, they become more specialized, more specialized. So see, today what is happening? Many of the functions, like we said, quasi-judicial, the justice delivery or problem resolving part, to an extent has been taken up by the administration. Same way, lawmaking or a part of the lawmaking has been taken up by the administration. The legislature and executive are now involving administration in law making. What is it called? Like I said, quasi legislative. What is it referred to? Right now, you just have to know and not understand. Right? Delegated legislation. Delegated legislation. Right? This is called delegated legislation or subordinate legislation. Because the legislature has delegated it, transferred temporarily, not permanently, right? It has temporarily transferred a part of the lawmaking function to the administration and executive. So it transfers to the executive, executive transfers it to administration and says, fine, you are more educated than us, you make this law. So they are not actually making the law, they are providing their inputs into the law. So that is called subordinate legislation or delegated legislation. Now see, so what kind of function is that? The administration now starts performing a semi-legislative function.
These data form are function of quasi-legislative.
Committees for what?
For policy making, like
No, they are advisory, right? They don't have quasi-legislative or quasi-delegated legislation function. For delegated legislation, right?
they also provide input to the government to make policies.
Yes, the policy is not law. Try to understand. Policy is the action and decision of the government, executive. Law is the function of legislature. So if the commission second ARC has recommended that do this, so it's not quasi-legislative function, right? Or it is not delegated legislation because second ARC has only recommended. It has not contributed to lawmaking. Fine. But ये कैसे होता है? Parliament wants to make a law on RTI. A law like RTI, right to information. Now Parliament says, okay, fine, RTI is a very typical law. Administration, citizen, how do we know the complications? We are parliamentarians, right? Or you want to make an IT Act 2000, Information Technology Act. We don't know much about it. So Parliament says, okay, what is it that you want to do? So let's say government comes up with the idea, see, this is the law. This is the scope of the law. This is the framework of the law. Parliament approves it and says it's okay. This is what we have approved. What is written in this text? What is written in this particular bill? Right? Bill is a proposal. That we have approved. You cannot do anything beyond this. But because there are a lot of technical inputs required, what is a supercomputer? We don't know. Right? What is e-commerce? We don't know. What is Google tax? We don't know. Right? What is a portal? We don't know. What is a website? That also we don't know. What is a web page? That we know nothing about what is it. Right? What is artificial intelligence? We don't know. Right? Polymorphism क्या है? हमें नहीं पता. So obviously they'll say, see, this is what law is. What are the specifics of this law? We don't know. But we know broadly that this is the law. This law deals with digital governance or e-governance, right? Use of technology, and it must not violate the rights of the citizens. This is what we know. So see, उसके अंदर जो specific inputs हैं, now that will be authorized or outsourced to an extent. Fine, that is called delegation. So with this restriction, with this boundary, it will be delegated to executive, prime minister, council of minister, cabinet. And this cabinet will now say, call the secretaries, the administrators, okay, come. So this is what law we have to make. So they will make a committee of secretary or group of secretary, and they will say, okay, go. Help the cabinet ministers in framing specific provisions. That is called delegated legislation. So any committee which is formed, any type of third party which is created, NGO, civil society, media, citizen, they are not making law. They are only providing input or advice to the law, right? But when it is done internally within the government, and the legislature sends it to executive, executive in turn involves the administration, then they make a law that is called subordinate legislation or delegated legislation, right? There is a very complex phenomena behind it. So right now you don't have to understand it. When you see tribunals, like we have just talked about simple tribunals, so there are tribunals when they make judgments, when they give solutions, when they take decisions, that is also a lawmaking, right? Once they say that compensation in such and such cases would be given on these parameters, it's a rule now. So see, delegated legislation is a very complex phenomenon. Many type of organizations are making provisions and sub-provisions under the overall framework made by Parliament. Once it is done, again it goes back to the Parliament. There is a committee of Parliament, Committee on Subordinate Legislation, that reviews what has been done by the executive and administration, right? So a complex system hai, but right now you just have to understand that there is something called, right, delegated legislation, where administration's role is now also to make laws. Right? In any case, executive legislation exists in India. President makes ordinances, governors make ordinances, but it is not president. Neither it is governor. It is prime minister and chief minister respectively. So there also administration gets involved. Prime minister automatically will call cabinet secretary. Ministers will call their secretaries by tell us what to do. See? So there are many aspects of lawmaking where administration is involved, right? But in reality, the administration is not supposed to make laws. Right? So we see a lot of overlapping, lot of intermixing, right? But what is the conclusion? That administration or public administration's role or function in the society is expanding. Especially now when you see the impact of technology and globalization. What happens then? Right? Let me just see one question. Ujjwal, okay. Does the pervasive nature of the state as the welfare agency compel the citizens to enchant the state? Yes. As we observed during the time of COVID, people went to their terrace to bang their utensils. Right? This was a very typical phenomenon. Huh? We don't know, right? Maybe instructions from the Mars we got that once we bang the thalis, right, a particular kind of energy will be released, right? Which will be a quantum energy. And probably the Prime Minister applied the E is equal to mc square. So this translated into a huge nuclear energy. We don't know, right? But you are right that definitely this may not be a completely one example which we are talking about. The state's pervasive nature is a regular phenomena of developing countries. The countries where people seek majority of the utilities for free, obviously they look up to the state. Just now I said, earlier it was God, now it is state. And probably, or then became the state, probably now it is market. as we say. From God to government to market now. Right? We see entrepreneurship, we can do anything. E-commerce, we can earn a lot of money. YouTube, right? So anybody who can dance is dancing. But sometimes the dance may become popular, we don't know. Right? So logic, that is what government is also promoting. Right? So they promoted that you make pakoras. So not everyone could make pakoras, right? But people started dancing that anyhow we can dance. Okay, there are audience for every type of dance. Right? So you can say that government's pervasive influence is not just reflected in citizens accepting government, right? But also the involvement of government in many of the activities of the citizens. So if you go for financial inclusion, it is through the government, right? If you want to authenticate your identity, it is through the government, right? If you want to aspire for a good career, it is through the government. Right? So why educated people are going for civil services? Illogical. You go to US, nobody bothers about civil servants. They are supposed to be the most, what you can say, subordinate class of people. Because civil services is associated with mediocrity. Right? Their academics, technology, entrepreneurship is kept at the highest pedestal. Right? See, India, it's totally reverse. Right? So if you are a Sarkari clerk, then also you might get CRs at least. Okay, or at least what is that? Right? Some Hyundai car. You see? That is the perception of the society. So if you're saying, yes, to an extent you can say, but see, this impact of government is visible in every aspect. Right? Your identity, your basic amenities, your utilities, right? More or less your entire life governed by the government. So the influence of government in terms of functions and activities is so widespread that you cannot escape government. So even if you want to live in isolation, still, right, you will require to prove your identity. कि भाई ये बांग्लादेशी तो नहीं हो इधर आ गए, right? So somewhere you will have to have that ID, which is authorized by the government. See? What happened? See, that is obviously a big mistake. Canadian Prime Minister technically blaming the state. Highly illogical. Why? How can you blame a state for this? Anybody would have done it, it's okay. Right? When you blame the state, technically you challenge our legal status. Right? Our identity as a whole. Right? You challenge the diversity which we have. It's highly illogical. Obviously, he is not fit to be, but he's there somehow. Right? Maybe by his good looks, he became the prime minister, right? But it's okay. So logically, right? Whenever you think of the state administration, its influence in your life cannot be undermined. So see, state is everywhere. It hardly leaves a gap. That is very true for countries like India, and even so in general, most of the countries of the world. So functions of public administration are diverse, manifold, and they are visible throughout our lives. Right? Even if today, when we talk about globalization, right, technology, what is changing now? What is globalization? Okay. So public administration as what we have read. What was the heading? PubEd as discipline, meaning of PubEd. We are trying to decipher what PubEd means, right? From different windows, different perspectives. So one perspective is academic discipline, other perspective is function or set of activity, right? Another perspective is institution. So PubEd as institution, we'll talk about globalization, don't worry. First you write. PubEd as institution or organization. Now see, it becomes logical that we study a subject, an area of study. What does it study? It studies various functions, right? Many functions that we perform in the society. Who performs these functions? A system, right? Institution or organization. So there is a physical entity also which is performing these functions. And there is a subject which is studying both of them. Are you getting? So academic study, one part. Functions and activity, one part. Who does these functions? Administration as system. To understand, we said academic study done in colleges, research universities, institutions. Functions, what public administration does in society. Who performs these functions? System, the administrator. Where it is done now? In the society. So try to understand, when we say that functions are performed by a system, where? In the society. Study is done by professors and academicians, where? In the college, academic institutions, research and development. That is what part? That is theory or academics. This is what part? Practice. Try to understand this difference. So we have just talked about theory or academics, what we study, what we develop, what we describe, and one, what we do, practice. See? So where we are doing it? Where? In the society. Who does it? The administration. Who is the administration? Civil servants. Top to bottom. Right? Secretary to clerk. DGP to Sipahi, it doesn't matter to us, right? Highest to the lowest public servant is part of the system which is doing it. Are you getting it? So in one domain, one perspective, one dimension, we are studying PubAd. In other dimension, we are doing PubAd. What is studying? Theory. What is doing? Practice. See? So who is doing it? The public servant, civil servant. So can I say that academicians are studying it? Right? Practitioners are doing it. इतना समझ में आया पहले? Fine. So let's briefly discuss this. Institution or organization. Tomorrow, then on, now it will become interesting. See, if you start understanding, right, it is nothing. Before also I told you, simplest subject. The only problem is understanding. People don't want to understand. Right? People just want to आँखियों से गोली मारे हैं. They want to just memorize and go कि भाई ठीक है बता दो 200 पेज रटना है. If UPSC was that, right, how easy would have been? Every university topper would have been in UPSC. Right. So every university topper, hardly they study guides, they know what to write, they mug up 2-3 pages, they write it and go. So that is why I said first to understand the essence, nature of exam. It becomes easy. वो effort जो will put 2-3-4 years, right? It can be bypassed very easily. But the important thing is you need to develop yourself. Don't listen to all the useless things. Majority of the gyan is given by those, right, who get frustrated from this process. That's why I said, is there a universal model? No, there's no universal model. If there was a universal model of success, everybody could have replicated it. Right? You are a unique person. You have unique capabilities. You can achieve the same goal with your means. Somebody will achieve the same goal with his means. Everybody has different means. As many human beings and so diverse, unique methods to achieve their goals. आपके पढ़ने का तरीका अलग है, किसी और का अलग है. People may have different aspects. So institution or organization now, see, this becomes very important aspect of public administration. That somewhere we believe that there is a physical system. So the moment I say that, okay, government has political part and administrative part. What is that administrative part? It is somewhere existing as a system, right? A physical entity. What is that physical entity? The entire government administration is the institution of public administration. Institution means the physical organizations which are working. So like I said, every system, right, which is of administrative type, which is non-political in nature, which is non-judicial in nature, which is non-military in nature. See, every institution, every structure, every system or organization, simplified, every organization that is working within the government system, which is of non-judicial, non-military, right, nature, is public administration. So where do we identify it? We identify it in all the places where government is implementing its policies, through all the systems through which government is implementing policies and laws. वो सब क्या है? Administration. See? So it's not one institution or one organization, it is a set or network of multiple organizations. Right? So here, generally, right, when we say there is a ministry in the government, right, ministry is political. And the moment I say there is a secretariat, right, or there is a department, so anything which starts below the ministry and starts from the secretariat or department, this all falls into administration. Anywhere in the world, the non-political, non-judicial, non-military part of government is called administration. Three things are very important: non-political, non-judicial, non-military. Police is part of public administration, right? Development is part of public administration. PWD is part of public administration. Everything that government does or performs to fulfill its functions or goals in the society, right? So this complex system which government or state manages to perform the functions, right, that is called as, what is it called? Institution or organization, or in common sense terms, you use the word bureaucracy. Public bureaucracy, government bureaucracy. So bureau is what? Bureau is office. Sorry. Bureau is office, right? Office which is headed by a single individual, right? You have one person at the top, only one, right? That is why it seems to be like this. ये क्या है? Head, single head. See? So bureau is an office, right? Cracy is the rule. Rule by office, which is headed by single individual, right? Or you can simplify and say rule by officials. By who are heading this office? Officials. Who are officials? Who are not politicians, who are non-judicial, who are non-military. So bureaucracy is a system which is headed by officials, not by politicians. How it is designed? It is designed in such a manner that there is single head at the top. So the boss is one person only. There is a huge system headed by one single boss. So it is centralized. Okay, that is the idea of bureaucracy. So the entire system of governing or administration used by the government to manage the functions of the society, that is called as bureaucracy or institution. Institution means organization. Generally, the word institution reflects a legal authorization or legal sanctity of a system. If a system is established by law and it works under the government, it is called institution, right? Or if it works in a private sector, we call it as enterprise. So that is a distinction, just for understanding, right? Otherwise, every office can be called as institution, fine, but institution means a more refined term. Legitimate. So when we say institution of government, right, we are referring to a system of authority which is legitimate. Constitution ने establish किया है, legitimate. Right? But don't get so confused. Institution means simply an organization, a system which is serving the needs of society. Are you understanding this? So now we have three perspectives. One as a subject, other as a function, and third as an organization. Now see, if you start understanding all of them, now there are new perspectives also, right? In globalization and technology, we'll talk about it. Now, if you start adding them, all of them, so you imagine this is one dimension, this is another dimension, this is another dimension. You add all of them slowly and slowly, then you understand the meaning of public administration. So, PubAd is not a single meaning, first of all, right? Public administration cannot be understood only from one perspective. So, it has multiple meanings, right, arising out of the way or approach we want to study it. What aspect of this public administration term are we studying, right? On that depends what meaning are we going to give it. So if I say I'm studying PubAd from, I'm an academician, I'm studying PubAd as subject or discipline. So my role is only to develop theories, right? If I say I'm a civil servant, right? So what do? I perform public administration. I practice public administration. It is my profession. Right? I'm in a government system. See, very clear. Now, if I say those who are doing PubAd, you, right, and those who are teaching PubAd, not me, but professors in, right, research institutions, right? You know Maheshwari. There's a book, very famous book, Avasthi and Maheshwari, of PubAd. Very popular, right? It was at that time. So Mr. Maheshwari came to teach in UPSC. He's a tall guy with cap, hat, right? So he started teaching for public admin. Nobody came. He got frustrated. मेरी किताब इतनी चलती है, मुझे कोई नहीं सुन रहा है. Because he had only an academic mindset. He did not know the exam. But your book is being made relevant only by the aspirant or the teachers. But your book has technically no relevance for UPSC if we don't interpret it that way. So does the student require Mohit Bhattacharya's knowledge? No. It requires the Mohit Bhattacharya's knowledge duly interpreted by a teacher and modified and given to the student. Right? Obviously, it requires intellectual understanding to first understand that book. Right? That is why teachers from teachers differ. Right? So, ये भी logical है. Kisi, do you need a research-based knowledge? No. So, see, there are people who are studying, developing knowledge, research and development, academicians, and there are people who are doing it. Fine. Do you think there can be a gap between them? If someone gives you a strategy on paper, fine, follow these steps for civil services. Yeah? You make timetables or not this way? And day 1 start 6:05 a.m. Right? Day 2 starts 9:05 a.m. 3 घंटा आगे हो गया. Fine. Day 3 doesn't start getting up in the evening. Right? So you tell someone, yeah, my timetable has changed there. I study at night. At night, nobody disturbs me because there's nowhere to go. Fine. But in the day, I cannot sit at one place. मैं ऐसे से देखता हूँ बाहर मुझे जाना होता है. Logical है, right? So somebody gives you a strategy on paper. That strategy is soulless strategy. Right? There is no soul into that strategy. It is only a designated timetable which says in 3 months you must do it. Right? What has month got to do with doing something? Right? Why that classification of month? Illogical. If I understand the concept on day 1, right, I can understand things so easily. If I don't understand the concept of day 63, 65, I will take another 365 days to understand it. Time is not necessary to be defined. Yes, there may be volume to be read. Right? So if I'm just thinking in terms of quantity, that okay, you have to read 600 pages, 600 pages, okay, per day you can read 20, 30 with understanding, okay, fine. So let's take these many days, right? That is how you can classify. But there is a possibility that a person understands much faster. There is also a possibility that a person may understand much slower. So month is immaterial. So, but somewhere, let's say somebody gives you the timetable, defines the time, writes each and everything step by step, step by step, step by step, right? You start using it. But then you see that you are not getting the result. Why? Because it was his strategy, right? Or it was his interpretation of the strategy. It is not your strategy. When you started studying, you realize, okay, fine, I can remember things more easily, right? When I'm eating momos outside. I can memorize things more faster, right? If I'm memorizing in the middle of the crowd, I become more conscious. You know, brain is so smart. You try studying in a train, right? You'll memorize faster. Your brain has a survival mechanism. Right? It is so smart. It will realize that he is reading here, so that means this must be something important. Why is he reading in this crowd? It must be really something important. It will channelize all the energy into that brain. You'll see. See, people, that days are gone, people meditated in caves. Right? Now people have started meditating in the middle of this global crowd. So you see, logically, let's say, for example, so you may have different mechanism, right? So it is possible what is written in theory, but not experienced, right? Not understood, not necessarily done. So when theorists are making knowledge, academicians are making knowledge who are professors, postdoctoral, and whatever, but they are only academic in nature. Whereas practitioners or administrators are doing administration, right? In reality, there may be huge gap between theory and practice. This gap may result in several consequences. When we need a solution to communalism or communal riots, right? So we have a theory about communal riots, but there's no solution. We may need solution for Naxalism, right? Our police forces are getting killed, whatever, right? Or paramilitary needs to change its strategy. But we have a theory of Naxalism, but we don't have solution for Naxalism. There are a lot of administrative problems which may not have a solution in theory. Are you getting? So see, when we study these, why are we studying it? So that we can reduce the gap between theory and practice. That is when you will say public administration evolves. If a subject evolves into, right, practical application, if it develops knowledge that is visible in the society, right, if it has independent identity, if it has scientific knowledge, if it has developed principles which can be universally applied, then it is called a discipline. So has PubEd become discipline now? It is in the making. It's still not discipline. Some agree that it has become a discipline. Some say that it is still evolving. Why? It is almost just 100, 125 years old as a subject. As an activity, it is there since human civilization. So which one is more relevant to us, that we have to see. As an activity, we have been part of it, right? But as an academician, we have not been. Even countries like India, Kautilya, written in somewhere 323 BC. Right? Now, Arthashastra, obviously people remember Kautilya more than Chandragupta, you know. Right? इसलिए टीचर इंपॉर्टेंट है ना, याद रखना। Right? बहुत सारे चंद्रगुप्त बन सकते हैं, कौटिल्य एक ही होगा। So logically, when you have the Arthashastra, right? Arthashastra somewhere reflects the concern for study, right? As back as 4th century BC, right? Concern for study, right? But was it compiled into a specific textbook, or the textbook that it was compiled into, is it relevant today? No. It was written in a specific context, environment, monarchy, right? Yes, if we had monarchy, or if we had certain elements of monarchy, then definitely that book would have been exactly relevant to us. And we can say that rather than Europeans, it was Indians who contributed to the study of public administration. But it is not exactly useful, right? But it is quite useful. I'm saying Why? Because it helps us get insight into what were or what kind of political administrative systems our forefathers used. Were they evolved enough to use these principles or not? See, many principles they developed. So when you read Kautilya's Arthashastra, right, which has elaborate 15 chapters or 15 adhikarnas, independent texts, around 15 text or subtexts, 180 chapters, 6,000 shlokas. It's an elaborate book. That means somebody would have actually worked hard to compile it. People say it is not one person, but it is group of wise men, right, who have contributed to that book. So see, the tradition of studying, academic study, and making it more application or applicable to the real world, that tradition has existed in Indian context since long time. In West also, right, they started the study of PubEd from practical experiences. Most of the people who contributed to PubEd were engineers, right? They were studying it, they were doing this particular function in their organization, then they realized the problem, and then they developed the knowledge. So see, this has been a traditional, what you can say, practice in public administration, that practitioners, those who are doing it, and those who are studying it, they have collaborated. In spite of that, the gap will always be there. Why? Because see, maybe the academician is not evolving as fast as the society. Society is independently evolving. Right? Academician is not going and telling the society, see, I'm writing on e-governance, right? You evolve this way so that I can write it in my chapter. That cannot happen. So society is independently evolving today. Why? There is globalization, technology, so many factors impacting it. So every society, human phenomena, social problems, right? So many things are changing every day now. And will public administration or will any other social sciences will have an answer to these problems or not, right? That is what the purpose of every study is. Can the study be made more practical, maybe more predictable than the happenings of the society? Can we predict before something happens? So public policy, right? We are focusing on evidence-based study. What is evidence-based study? Right? Data, fact, AI, right? What is called as big data analysis. What is big data? Right? Data is the new oil, as all the people are saying. What is big data? The problem with Aadhaar is big data. Right? Big data problem kya? See, your entire governance or government system is digitized. Right? Obviously, you need to put that data somewhere. You need to retrieve that data. Every time you retrieve the data, you need to authenticate the user. ये problem है कि नहीं? Fine. It's like every time you're taking the umbrella, there is no rain. The moment you put back the umbrella at home, again the rain starts. So how many times you'll go back and get the umbrella, go back and get the umbrella, right? Or you will carry an umbrella permanently. Unduly you are overloading now, right? So you cannot carry the umbrella permanently. And people will start laughing at you. तो बोलेंगे धूप भी नहीं है, बारिश भी नहीं है, umbrella क्यों है? So see, you're correct that every time, right? How can we, how we can understand that every time the data is being used, is it being used for correct purpose or not? So when there is a large data at one place, first it has to be secured, it has to be protected, it has to be retrieved, authenticated, verified, right? And it has to be used again and again, again and again, again and again. See? So if anybody accesses that one data, they will access every data. So theft, security, privacy, that is also a problem with big data, right? Everything is at one place. What will happen? Once somebody encroaches into it, your entire governance is gone. Right? That is what was happening with Pentagon, US, 2001, जो attack हुआ, right? Primarily data breach. Why data breach? Because they had outsourced it, and obviously they did not follow any documentary, contract. They followed a contract which was obviously within them, because they never wanted to tell the world that by our defense operations are outsourced to someone. The US is very conscious about cost. They have outsourced their prisons. Right? Prisons are managed by private sectors. That is why there is a competition amongst prisoners ki which one I will go into. Right? यहाँ का दाल मखनी अच्छा है, वहाँ का butter chicken better. See? Well, they are privatized. They are highly cost conscious. So when you will go for digital governance or e-based governance, right, you will always be cautious of this big data problem. And obviously data keeps adding, no? Population will not reduce, fine? And now variety of data is needed. Biometric data, physical data, residential data, this data, then data change. Imagine how big servers are required to do that. So see, when technology comes, globalization comes, artificial intelligence comes, now challenges to the governance becomes extreme. Government is not that smart. Right? And even if it is, it cannot take decisions so fast. It has to look after poor people, farmers, tribals, regional people, right? Backward regions, this region, it has to look into everything. So every policy it makes has to be utilitarian at least, right? And obviously it will not rest on being utilitarian, it will move towards justice, but everybody should be included, not just maximum people. See, that is what government's problem is. So in today's scenario of technology, globalization, and the advancement in various other sectors, the government has become incapable, or government is getting handicapped in governing, and that is why the growth of market takes place, private sector. So government realizes it cannot run aviation, it cannot run BSNL, right? It cannot manage transport networks. So what? Let us find out some partners like private sector. Let us collaborate with market. See? So once market comes into picture, now see the definition or meaning of public administration again changes. Why? Earlier, PDS system was distributed by government, let's say for example. Now private sector says we can deliver it better than you. See the difference? So now public interest, which was served by the government and government only. Public interest was the sole monopoly of the government. Now that one part of those functions are now being performed by the private sector. So do you think that under globalization and technology, there has been distribution of the role of the government or private sector and government in terms of public interest now? It is not just the government's monopoly public interest, because functions are same. People still need food, people still need banking services, people still need transport, people need to be included in developmental process. So automatically now, if the functions remain same or they become more complicated, but government says we are not able to do it, private sector should do it with us, so automatically the functions are same, but who is serving it? Not government, but a collaboration of government and private sector, you see. They have asked a question. This is the first thing we teach in the first 1 week only. 3 questions in this UPSC paper are directly on this idea. Right? We use a term, okay, publicness of private sector or publicness of public interest served by private and public, or public and private. What are we trying to say? That private sector does not just serve the interest of its consumers or customers. It actually serves the interest or a part of the interest of society. For example, Tata, Delhi Distribution, Tata Power, BSES, Yamuna, whatever. Right? These are distribution companies known as DISCOM, created by a regulatory law. right? Discom का role क्या है? You get bill in your house, electricity bills. So you see Tata Power लिखा हुआ उस पे या BSES लिखा हुआ है, whatever. So they are private discoms, distribution companies. What is the role? To distribute electricity and collect bill. Most of them are in losses. That is why they had created the Uday Yojana. Uday कौन? Uday Chopra है? Career खत्म. So what is that Uday? Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Now see, private sectors were involved in distribution because government did not have the ability of distribution. Transmission and distribution losses, right? People putting that katia, you know that. That's the word typical use for that, right? So see, taking electricity through that means theft, electricity theft, useless public functions being performed, right? From these electricity, from these distribution, and the bill imposed on the people. So how do you think this Ram Leela is played? Right? Or whatever they are doing jagratas on the road. From where they are taking this electricity, right? Unless they are using their own generators, which is restricted by the courts now, right? Considering the fire safety norms. So ye jo distribution, this load of this penalty or what you say, the bill is redistributed on the people. So many of these companies are in loss, but why they are doing it? Because now they have been made partner with the government to serve the public interest. So can you say private sector is not serving the public interest? No, it would be incorrect. Fine, you write one question, then you can go. If you feel sleepy, you can tell me so we can have a break, right? Because generally I am not in habit of break, but you can have a break, there is no problem. Right? Because in the morning batch, after 2 months, I started giving break when they started crying. So I said, it's okay. And you could have told me at least. So I said, if you won't tell me, obviously, I won't know. Right? The mother doesn't feel that feed the child unless he cries. Right? So obviously, unless you tell me, I will never know.
Do we have to cry?
Yeah, obviously, at least you need to convey it. Because we may not be in habit, no? Right? After 4 attempts, you are not in habit of anything actually. Fine? Everything is boring to you. You just follow mechanically. Fine? Fine. So आप write a question, write one question. Right. Okay. The meaning and scope of public administration is evolving with times. Comment. This is one question. You don't have to do it right now, but this should be the starting question. Right? So you try writing. So you'll get your notebooks tomorrow. Answer writing notebooks, right? So you can start it from tomorrow, don't worry. But you should, when you start, chalo kal se start karo, then we'll know this also, right? Another question you write. If our civilization fails, it would be mainly because of breakdown. It would be mainly because of breakdown of administration. And there's a scholar, W.B. Donham. W.B. Donham. Same comment. So you kindly write it. Don't write the answer, just write the question. Fine. You get this, you've got the handout, kindly read it today. Fine. Tomorrow onwards you start writing. It's okay. But think about it. So we can start from here, tomorrow's lecture. What are your views regarding these questions? See you then tomorrow. And like I'm really serious. You can ask me for the break, right? In case I forget. Fine. Next.